So, you might be wondering what I'm doing. Thinking, you're my average bear, what the hell? No. Let's try that again. What am I doing? There's no models. This is just a little bit of plastic card. As a matter of fact, there's three. Well, okay, I'm getting rid of this bit, but there's three identical pieces of plastic card. What in tarnation are you doing, my average bear? That's me guessing what you're thinking. Is that what you're thinking? It might be what you're thinking. I'll add to the confusion. Does that make it any clearer? BGW. GBW? Well, this is my second Let's Test. And for this Let's Test, I wanted to see if there was any objective truth to the idea that when you use... Oh, wait. There we go. Now I'm better prepared. The idea is, for a long time, I've thought that when I use metallic paints, like these four right here, gold, gunmetal, greedy gold, weapon bronze, shining silver, these are the metallic paints that you too may have in your collection of paints and use regularly to make your 40k troops sparkle. So for many years, I've had this thought that if I'm going to use these metallic colors, I better put them on the model that I'm painting with a black undercoat. The thinking is, and in fact, every time I do this, I have the same thought. If I put this on over black, it's going to stand out. If I put it on, but underneath it is a white color, then it's going to feel muted. It's not going to be as shiny. And I gave myself a ton of different explanations grounding in what little I know of physics. Which I should point out is not much. I am not a physics guy. I'm a psychology guy from way back in the day. So physics isn't my strong suit. I'm more of a, let's call me a hobbyist. Pun intended. So I gave myself all these ideas about why this would work, why the metal would be shinier if I applied it with a black background. But I've never tested it. Like, objectively, I've never tested. Is there actually a difference? Is there an objective difference when I use these metal paints over black or white? And I recently got these sheets of plastic card because, this 40k hobby, there just isn't enough plastic. I went out and got some sheets of just plastic. The idea is I use these for... mostly for when I magnetize models. It's a good to put these plastic cards over voids, and there you anchor the magnet, and yada yada yada. So I finally have an opportunity to test this theory without ruining more any of the models I intend to paint. So here's what's going to happen. I have G, I have W, and I have B. So black, white, and gray. Each of these cards is going to get just a good coat of primer. And so for B, we're going to use matte black. For W, I'm going to use matte white. And for G, I'm going to use uniform gray. All of these paints are from Army Painter. I have a couple of Citadel colors, but not enough. I had to go buy some, and well, that's just not going to happen. I'm going to stick with what I've got, because I want to see, is there an objective difference? So the plan is, I'm going to go outside, I'm going to hit these each with a corresponding primer. When they dry, I'm going to set them down to dry upside down, and then I'm going to mix them up. So I don't know which... Actually, that doesn't make sense. Okay. So the whole mixing them up thing isn't going to count. Isn't going to work really. I'll know which one. Obviously, I'll know which one has a black, white, and gray primer. So once these dry, I'm going to give each of them a stripe of each and see what they look like. And then I'm going to try it again, but I'm going to cover up the entire card so that no primer shines through with one of these four metal colors. Let's see if that makes a difference. I don't know if this test is going to work out, but let's experiment anyway. All right, my test squares are primed. As indicated, I have black, I have white, and I have gray to serve as kind of a control. I don't know if it'll work the way I expect as a control here, but let's give it a shot. If there's any difference between these two, we might expect that this would be kind of in between. So let's find out. I've marked these off into 4 squares because I've got because I've got 4 metallic colors. And I'm going to reach into my palette. I have Greedy Gold set up, ready to go. It's just slightly thinned the way I would thin it out if I was actually painting with it. Not entirely sure, but it doesn't seem very opaque. I wonder if I used too much water. Okay, there it is, the gold paint, one single coat. Do the same for white. Okay, there it is. Goodness, it looks really yellow on my screen. Doesn't look quite as yellow in person. Hopefully I'll be able to do some color correction in the video editing software package. And there are the 3 samples. We've got gold over black, gold over white, and gold over gray. You know what? Let me adjust my lighting source to make sure it's kind of right in the middle. Okay. So there it is. And looking at the screen, I do feel that there's some differences here in the gold. And what I'm seeing on the screen really doesn't match with what I'm seeing with my eye. to my eye, this looks pretty thin. And there's like a whole spot right here where it looks almost gray. And on my screen, it looks a little splotchy, but it's not the same as what I'm seeing. So I'm seeing it kind of on a diagonal. The camera is seeing it kind of head on. So I think that angle might make a difference. But, there is kind of a difference. It kind of looks different. On the screen, anyway, this looks more yellow. This does look more gold. These two look fairly close. Let's try a different arrangement here. Let's try this. Yeah, these two look fairly similar. This one does look a bit more yellow than metallic. And that experience does match my eyes. So that's interesting. At least for gold, we can tell that there is a bit of a difference. This one hits my eyeballs more like gold, and so does this relative to the white. So there might be something to this. Well, I guess it's not a myth, really. Let's see if the same happens with, let's try shining silver, which is, the brightest silver that I have on hand. And we'll use it underneath the gold. So I'll do the same thing. I'll add a bit of silver. I will add a drop or two of water. I don't want to dilute these too much, but I also don't want them full strength, because I wouldn't use them on my models full strength, but something close to full strength. In a previous video, I discovered that while other paints look pretty good with pretty significant thinning, the metallics don't react the same way. Okay, so here is the shining silver. Here's what it looks like over gray, and it really just looks like a lighter shade of gray here. I can see the metallic flecks with Mark II eyeballs. I'm sorry, Mark I eyeballs. Looking in through the screen, it looks much more gray. You really can't make out the metallic essence of it. On the black, yeah, it's a lot more gray than it is to my eyeballs. In fact, it looks more gray here, but when I'm looking at them myself, there's a lot more black. So it's very streaky. And here, man, it's really hard to make out the paint here over the white. And I think that's more of a reaction to the light source. So what happens if we do one of these? No, okay. On the camera, it just doesn't pick up very well. To my eyeball, it looks a bit more metallic, honestly, than this guy, the gray, but it looks less metallic than the black. You can still tell it's metallic, but it does hit differently than the black. So with the shining silver, we can see that there is something to this idea of the undercolor really does impact how you perceive the gold. That's interesting. I honestly thought this experiment was going to go nowhere. I thought it was going to be like, oh look, it doesn't make a difference. Like they're all metallic, and they are, but they really do hit different. And I wonder if with a second coat, this effect will change. So once I finish with the colors I've picked, I'll move on to testing. Seeing what they look like with another coat. Up next, gunmetal. Let's take a look at the freshly painted bolt gun metal. And I'll just kind of describe what I'm seeing, and then I'll go to what I'm seeing on the screen. So, goodness gracious. I mean, they all look pretty subtly different. This really does look a bit more silvery to me. Although this one is kind of a close second. Here, it's pretty washed out. It looks a lot like the gray underneath it. Here, you can tell it's like a dark gray, but on the black, it does look silver. On the screen, it's pretty reflective, and this looks gray, and this looks gray. This looks perhaps a little darker than this one, but these two are very similar compared to this guy. Yeah, it's really strange how the optical experience is very different from the screen experience. I'm sure it has a lot to do with lighting and probably a couple of tricks of perception. So it still looks more metallic here, although it does look metallic here. It's just a different kind. It's more subtle here. Here I can see the metal flakes, but it looks pretty gray. I can't tell that it's bolt gun. So the silver, it looks more silver to me than this guy. This looks more gray, and it makes sense. There's a little bit of black in here, I'm guessing, compared to this guy. That is interesting. Okay, so these all so far have hit not just different, but subtly different. We're on to our last one of these. Which is weapon bronze. All right. So here in the black, I can absolutely tell that's metallic using my eyeballs. But it's very uneven. It's very patchy. I can still see a lot of black beneath the bronze color. With the white undercoat, it's a lot less splotchy, but the metallic flakes are really hard to see. It looks mostly orange, like it was meant to represent bronze without any of the metallic kind of flavor to it. This gray one, it is about as metallic as this black one to me. Although, again, it's pretty inconsistent, it's pretty splotchy. When I look up at my computer screen, as my viewfinder, so to speak, I can definitely tell they're all metallic, although less so with the white background. So it looks like, if I was going to draw any conclusions from this, let's call it a test, less so than less so than anything else, because I'm not being objective and what have you. I'm just kind of comparing what these look like and how I perceive them, both on the screen and in person. And I would say that there is a truth to this idea that a dark, well, specifically a black undercoat, it makes the metallics stand out better as metallics. Certainly with the white, it's mostly kind of the idea that it's a metallic is fairly washed out. And with the gray, it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes it's fairly metallic, and sometimes it's just like a darker shade of gray. That's kind of an interesting finding to me. So let's say it's not so much that the black undercoating, makes it look better. Although I think, if you had your choice of undercoating for these three, I would probably go with the black, the way I tend to do already. And it's not just me. I've seen at least one other YouTuber, like a YouTube painter, mention the same thing. The white or gray, it has some surprising results. Sometimes gray works pretty well, and other times it doesn't. So it almost depends on what metallic color you're going to put on it. So that's my preliminary conclusion. I'm going to let these dry and see if as they dry, it looks different to me. And then I'm going to hit them with a second coat to see if there's any difference there whatsoever. Like once all the kind of splotchiness is gone with a second or third coat, let's see if it makes a difference. So off camera, I went ahead and applied a couple of different coats on each of these little pieces of plastic card on which we're doing our test. And I think the addition of the coats really kind of helped things quite a bit. I think they all, so they're all looking clearly metallic now, and the base coat is a lot less influential on the reflectivity on how they appear, whether they appear metallic or not, and I can still tell which one is which. I'm pretty sure this one is black, but that's because after the third coat, I still wasn't able to get all the patches of the undercoat from showing. So, here, for example, I see a bit of the black, some there, some there, some there. And so it's clearly harder to get coverage, at least with the gold and the bronze. The silver and the bolt gun metal, those are denser for some reason, and so those are better coverage. So I can still tell this is a black undercoat, but the advantage in reflectivity is kind of gone. It's really, like, would I be able to distinguish between these two were I not able to see these splotches of poor coverage? I don't know. It might be helpful if I did something like this. I don't know. Can you tell the difference? How about... So the light source kind of at a more oblique angle. It's now coming from this side. It's a little easier to read on the screen, I think. And so if we just compare the gold, this one looks darker. These are pretty yellow. But this one I think is the white. Yeah, okay. So, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and just say this is the black. I'm sorry, no. This is the black, this is the gray, and this is the white. So, is this the white? Sure is. Is this the black? Sure is, which, by process of elimination, this is the gray. And... like I said, I can still see some differences in color, but it's not as big as I initially thought. Let's take a look at the shining silver. and see what we got. I mean, those are pretty close. In fact, I would wager to say that these two look almost exactly the same, where this one is a bit different. What is this? White. Okay. But they're all pretty clearly metallic. And on camera, it's really hard to tell a difference in this shining silver. How about the bronze? All right, well, here the light, the difficulty in coverage, or the saturation, or whatever you want to call it, the density of the pigment or the paint, it reveals which is which, okay? Because even on the camera now, I can see some splotches of black here. I can see here, it's harder to tell on camera, but there's some splotches of white, and even here I can see some splotches of gray. So we can see a difference there, but that's really more of a difference in coverage. In terms of metallic sheen, on camera, I don't see a big difference. Maybe there's a bit of a bigger difference here, but just using my eyes, there isn't a ton of difference. Where is the bolt? Here we go. Here's the bolt gun metal. And I kind of have to keep this down so that we don't have too many shadows. Because the plastic card kind of warped because there's paint on one side and not on the other. So on camera, I can see a difference here. This looks a little darker. But, they're pretty similar, and on camera, it's tougher to tell whether they're metallic or not. Although but to my eyeball, these are all three pretty clearly metallic, and I don't see a ton of differences. To my eye, these all look a lot more similar than they do on camera. And I guess the last one. What is the last one? Is it Greedy Gold? I don't remember. It might be the Greedy Gold. Here we go. So again, as with the bolt gun metal that we just saw, this one that's on the black, that's on a gray undercoat. It looks a little darker somehow than the white undercoat and the black undercoat. It's an interesting result because for some of the other paints, gray was closer to the white or the black. I think this is the lesson for this entire, maybe not experiment, but this entire test. So we've learned a couple of things, I think. One, the undercoat, it does make a difference in how metallic paints are perceived. Which, makes sense because the same is true for any other color. When you put a black undercoat on a red armor, paint, it's going to look different, than you would expect a white undercoat to look like. And it's a thing that painters who've been in the hobby for a while manipulate, right? They'll specifically pick an undercoating to achieve a certain effect, right? So if they want kind of a grittier looking paint job, then they'll pick like a darker undercoat. If they want something a little brighter, they'll go with white, and everything that goes on top of it, it's modified, it's adjusted a bit as a result of that undercoat. So we wouldn't expect metallic paints to act all that differently. Although, there's metal flakes in the paint, so maybe there would be some differences. So we know that matters. So it's going to change the perception. But it seems like which way it'll go, like whether it looks more metallic or less metallic, it really depends on the specific combination of base layer and undercoat. So in some cases, the the greedy gold is going to look more yellow than gold, and in other cases, the bolt gun metal, for example, on the gray almost completely washed out, and it looked just like another coating of gray. So the specific effect that you're going to see is going to depend on the combination of metallic paint and base coat that you are using. So you can kind of manipulate this a bit, or at least just be aware of it. And obviously, this effect, like whether it looks more metallic, whether it looks more, more or less metallic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It depends on the coverage, the angle that you're looking at it, and whether you're doing it with your eyeballs or on camera. So these are all things that a painter needs to keep an eye out for. And there's no really straight answers here. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people would chalk up to experience, and I would agree. I mean, we could do a test to test every different combination, and then, I don't know, do some like an indices of reflectivity to get a more objective sense for how this works. But ain't anyone got money for that. I'm not going to go through that length of testing. I really just wanted to see, does it make a difference? And, it does. The base coat matters. How it matters, that's a different story and a lot more complicated. And, we can chalk it up to experience. So, neat. I learned something today. I learned that my gut can sometimes be right. All right, I've been implicitly using metallic paints over black base coats to the point where if I have a model that's painted a different color, I'll go on and add a layer of black before I add the metallic color to give me that extra sparkle. And yeah, my intuition about that was correct. The black, it does seem to sparkle a bit more. The metallic flakes seem to have a better opportunity to do their thing. That is not to say that the other two look bad. They just look different, and you may want to experiment with this on your own. Cool. I learned a little something. Yay. Also, I wasted a lot of metallic paint. But enjoy. Peace.